Hold on, let me put you live.
All right, folks, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Saturday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. All right, do you believe this is the last Saturday of the first month of the 21st year of the 21st century? This is crazy. Crazy how fast it already went by. And what a 4 years we've had under the Trump administration, in this first month of the new year has been crazy. I mean, we saw a rush to impeachment. I'm going to get into that a little bit later in the second half of the first hour. So some housekeeping stuff. First, good morning. Good morning, Jazz. Yep.
Good morning. How are you today?
Did I catch you off guard?
Just a little bit, but it's okay.
Just a little bit. All right. Good morning. You look marvelous. It's a pretty
Why,
good
thank
match.
you, Joe.
You know, I am broadcasting from a remote, non-disclosed location, secure remote, non-disclosed location today, but I'll be back in studio next Saturday morning. After all, it will be the first Saturday of the month of February, right? We're already into February come Monday. So the first Saturday will be next Saturday. So that means, politically speaking, at 7 o'clock with Senator Mike Moore, who will be, assuming, in studio. Seems like COVID stuff has lightened up a little bit, right, Jazz? I mean, things are a little lighter now. It seems open.
Everything's been so crazy right now.
It just seems all of a sudden. Well, I can understand Governor Newsom deciding to lighten up on some of the restrictions, considering over 1 million people have signed a recall petition to get him out of that governorship. So housekeeping, Jazz, we're going to go through call-in number to join the conversation for two-way talk. It is 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. That's how you join the studio. You can also text us on our text line, which is 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. That will show up on a screen here in my studio, but you can also text Joe on the radio at gmail.com, one word, and guess what? That will also show up on the same screen. So you have a couple ways to reach out without having to call in. It's amazing how many people call. You know, less than 0.5% of people who listen to talk radio will call talk radio, Jazz. Very small percentage will actually.
Oh, right?
Yeah. So you know when you get a few calls, it represents a lot of people. But anyway, I'm going to have open lines first hour. I do have something to talk about when it comes to the impeachment in the second half of the first hour, and then joining up in the second hour at 7 o'clock, we'll be joined by Jennifer Kerns. Now, she's the host of the newly nationally syndicated show All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns. Now, she has served as a GOP strategist and spokeswoman for the California Republican Party, a strategist for Colorado recalls over the Second Amendment, and she's a writer and researcher for the most watched U.S. presidential debate in the 2016 election cycle on Fox News. So she's been around the block a little bit. She knows her stuff. And we're going to talk to her a little bit about, well, Joe Biden once said democracy needs consensus as he goes and he signs record-breaking executive orders. I mean, in the first day, 17 on the first day, within hours of being inaugurated, he signed a record number of executive orders. And when you think about it and you look at what other presidents have done over time and where they've gone sworn in, it does. Clinton he signed 2 EOs in his first week. Bush signed 2 in his first 2 weeks. Obama 5 in his first week, and Trump only 4 in his first week. Now Biden is somewhere at 40 now, or more. I think it's over 40, and 30 plus in the first 5 days in office. So what is that? That is, like he said, a president who governs by executive order is in essence a dictator. His words, man, his words. Barack Obama, right? I have a pen and a phone. And he was making reference to the Obamacare, what they call, it's actually called the Affordable Care Act, but everybody knows it as Obamacare. But the Affordable Care Act, as they say, was anything but affordable. All right, I wanted to touch base. Look at what happened with GameStop. Jazz, are you familiar with this GameStop phenomenon in the last 3 days? You've been following that at all? It's
I have. It's been kind of wild. The Reddit people went crazy and told everybody to buy GameStop. Wall Street was totally baffled by it and had no idea what was going on. And it was just crazy. And then they shut everything down pretty quickly.
well, yeah, in essence. So, folks, selling short in the market, and I'm not going to pretend I'm this huge market genius or financial genius, but 30 years of doing some financial talk radio, you start to pick some stuff up. And selling short is a very legit method, and it's a practice used in the market, used by hedge funds. Now, hedge funds are huge amounts of money controlled or managed by a person or a very small number of people, hedge fund managers. And to be in a hedge fund, you have to be a qualified investor. What does that mean? That means you and me probably aren't in it. You've got to have either a substantial amount of money or in control of it. So say maybe you are the treasurer of the police association or medical association or something that is someone who's responsible for where your retirement fund goes, right? Somebody who has a lot of money or somebody who controls a lot of money. And they become qualified investors, which means we're talking large sums of money, and the kind of money that actually makes and breaks businesses and sways trends in the market. So selling short is legal. It's fine. It's absolutely legal. And what that is, and because the market, after all, guys, the market is based on your ability to guess what's going to happen. Everything's futures, right? I talk about this with the gasoline. Last week, somebody said about the gas going up so quickly, and gas is always at the pump. You're going to reflect how much they think it's going to cost them to replace the gas already in their tank. So when you pull in the gas station, it's not what they paid for that's in the ground. It's what they think they're going to pay for the replacement of that gas. So when you go to the pump, and even though you're still pumping gas that they paid a higher price for, but there's a glut and the oil is dropping, it's down to $40 or $39 a barrel, they know that they're going to replace it at shorter money. Therefore, the price of the gas goes down. Same principle. If all of a sudden the gas is going up because in the future they think the oil will go up, like when you kill the pipeline, like Joe Biden did, when you cancel leases to drill in the Gulf, when you do all these things that hurt the gas and natural gas industry, which is going to cause the price of per barrel of oil to go up, the gas station companies know, hey, we are going to pay more money to replace the oil, i.e. the gas that's in our tank. That's why the price instantly goes up. And you've seen it go up about 40 cents since Joe Biden has taken office, right? Well, working the stock market is same thing. You're doing on futures. So it's perfectly fine. It's legitimate for a company who says, I'm watching these trends and I think that something's going to happen and this is going to go down. Or something happens and they quickly respond to it and they sell short right away. Day of 9/11, when that happened in the morning, anybody who sold short on hotel chains, airlines, anything of that nature, or any stock for that matter, because all stock dove, they would have made out. But that wasn't illegal to read the market. Now you look at GameStop, who hasn't seen a profit in 3 years. GameStop, folks, and maybe we should start with this, Jazz, right? GameStop, folks, is a brick and mortar building where they sell video games. This is kind of like having a Blockbuster today. You don't need to go to a brick and mortar structure to buy video games. You download them in seconds over the internet, just like you do stream movies right now. Who buys boxes of the DVDs of movies, really? Once in a while, yeah. My sister a few years ago gave me a box set of a complete series, a series I love. She spent a lot of money. I can watch that series anytime on Amazon or any of the multiple streaming services I have, but it was the thought, here's the box set. It has some, extras that go with it. But nobody goes to a Blockbuster. They went out of business, and GameStop was going to go out of business. There was no need for a brick and mortar building. Nobody has to come up out of their mummy's basement, get the bus or the bicycle down to the
Joe,
brick
you've
and
got
mortar
two callers.
and do this whole, let me buy this thing. So what happened is they knew that it was going to go out of business, and they bet on it going out of business. So what they did is they short the stock on it. But see, a bunch of day traders and investors who have now started to kind of crack these codes and watch these trends and learn how the big boys are doing this, decided they were going to get some money here. So they were talking on Reddit and other platforms, and the Robinhood app is supposed to be this person on Twitter and on the social media platforms where they help and talk to day traders and small little personal investors. And they said, don't let them short this company. They drove the stock price up, and they drove it up, and they forced a short sale. They squeezed a sale, or what they call squeeze or short. And this resulted in big hedge fund money, big hedge fund people, losing not millions, but billions of dollars. A lot and lot of money. And guess what? They're outraged. And big tech stepped in to help big Wall Street and shut down the communication. Again, we see big tech censoring and stepping in and manipulating. And even Elizabeth Warren thinks that these were bad people because the big Wall Street money people lost. And you should go Google and listen to some of the conversations and statements that these billionaires have and what they really think of you. And they think you should be thrown in jail if you did this and caused them a lot of money. So we could talk about this a little bit if this is something that, where's your perspective on this? And just one more thing before I go to the phones on this. As I said, short, all right, selling short or shorting a stock is not illegal. But shorting a stock and then causing it to go down is illegal. And that's when people have shorted stocks and then they get an investigation started, or they start rumors, or they cause something to happen, or they do something that will cause the stock to go down and they make a fortune. That, my friend, is 100% illegal, and they should go to jail for that. But just betting on the market and reading the market and betting on it, and they're literally betting on it that that's going to happen. And it doesn't take a genius to say a brick and mortar building or a business model based on a brick and mortar building of downloadable service or product has a limited shelf life in a digital world is not that difficult of a read, is it? I don't think so. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let's go to Richard in New Hampshire, who's been waiting patiently. Good morning, Richard. Thank you for holding on, man.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, 9/11, I saw all those people that shorted the airlines. They shorted that before the planes even crashed. And I'm just saying to myself, those people should have been investigated, and those people should have went to prison.
Yeah, there's
because that was somebody gave.
Yeah, well, the thing about
I was going to say somebody gave them the information.
Yeah, and the thing there is that the first planes hit before the stock market was open that day, but they can do what they do place orders, so they're already sitting there when the market opens. Yeah. Now the thing about that is some, and it's funny you say that, right? Because there's I don't know if you've ever watched the show Billions. It's a Showtime show, and it's about a billionaire hedge fund guy, right? Axelrod. And the whole premise of the show is on the Tuesday morning of 9/11. He was actually supposed to be going in to get fired from his brokerage firm. His partners, I think, were going to push him out or something. And he was going to see his lawyer, which is the reason he wasn't in the tower. He wasn't in the building when it came down. And when he saw what happened, he immediately shorted the airlines, right? This resulted in tens of billions of dollars that he made, that he then later used to take care of all the families of the partners of the firm. And then he also backed the fire department, where his wife's brother was a firefighter. But in this storyline, Richard, they get all pissed off at him for making billions of dollars off of this, and they act as though it was blood money that he got. And when I watch this, and why I'm bringing this up is I think it's kind of apropos here, but he didn't cause 9/11. He didn't have prior knowledge of 9/11.
No.
He's a stock guy that something happened, and he knew for the survival of the firm and all of the fact that his entire firm was on the 80th floor and were gone, and he was going to have a lot of families to have to take care of, he immediately shorted stocks, including the airline stocks, and made money. I don't think it's not illegal, but he got a lot of bad press for it. So that's what I'm saying is, guys, it's not illegal to short a stock. It's illegal to short it and cause it to go down. So that has been part of the whole conspiracy theory, is the 9/11 was known, but it was also, look at it, there's also those, Richard, right, that believe that World War II, we knew it was coming, and that's why certain ships were in there and things of that nature, and we wanted it to get into World War II and that kind of thing. Now, yes, there's a lot of compelling arguments out there that this had to do with just a bigger picture, because we needed a war on terror, because there's never a winner in the war on terror, right? Think about this, folks. How do you know if you ever win the war on terror? It's a war that can go on forever, which means the military-industrial complex and the Rothschilds and the banks lending the money, right? Who are all the suspects that always make a lot of money when there's war? Wouldn't it be nice to have a war that never ends? A war that you can't identify the real enemy, right? It has all the benefits.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, yeah, sure, but can you win the war on terror?
Iraq.
Do we ever win it, though?
No.
No. So you get all the benefits.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
Go ahead.
Well, the thing is, it's like I said. I mean, when the terrorists are being funded by some of the senators, and they get all the money. They get the medical, they get the water, they get the bullets, they get the rifles, they get everything from the United States senators and congressmen. Yeah, so there's never going to be an end to war if we're supporting them, right? Because McCain was in charge of that, and he was the one that was supplying them with all kinds of weapons and stuff like that. Did you notice when he on his tomb, when they put the American flag on it? Were you aware about the American flag on his tomb? Did you see the picture of that? The blue field with the stars.
Yeah.
The blue field, the stars. They had put that at his feet, and the flag was wrinkled, meaning that he was a traitor. I don't know if you're aware of that. Were you aware of that, Joe?
Well, I'm aware that is out there, that's being said. I'd have to go back. Honestly, I don't remember.
Well, the flag, yeah.
The day I watched it on TV.
No, you
don't. Watched
the
funeral. Honestly, I can't recall. I mean, if I would have assumed that his head was under the side where his head, the blue field was where his head was. I don't know any of that. I've heard this.
No, it wasn't. It was at his feet.
I heard that the flag was wrinkled and wasn't pristine, and had something to do with him being knighted into one of these the cabals or something.
That was Bush.
Yeah.
That was Bush. George Bush was knighted. And the original 13th Amendment, Joe, I don't know if you're aware of this, but nobody can keep titles of nobility in the United States. They can't. If they do, they can't stay in the United States. So that means every attorney out there who's Esquire, they should all be thrown out of the country, because that's title of nobility. Am I right or wrong?
Well, it's also it's used to denote a person practicing as a lawyer, legal. I mean, esquire.
Yeah, but it's
Esquire.
also a title of
Esquire is
nobility.
a common English term. You're the squire, which means
Yes.
you're the landowner. But
Yeah.
esquire has always been an old English term of just a country lawyer, basically. But I
Right.
don't know. I
But
don't think we're
still,
gonna
over
start
here in the
throwing.
United States.
Look, I don't think we're going to start throwing lawyers out of
Nah,
the
that's okay.
country. You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
On
well,
this-
all
on
right.
this
Let me tell you
GameStop
one
thing.
thing here, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the GameStop.
All right, let me tell you one thing here about what happened with the attorneys, okay? All right? I'm going to tell you something about the attorneys. All right, when this country was first founded, we had laws of the United States, Joe. We've had that for what, about maybe 100 years we had laws of the United States. And what happened is the attorneys came in, and what they did is they created laws of the United States of America. And what they did is they took laws of the United States, Joe, and they put it in the closet. It's still there, but we're not using that anymore. But laws of the United States of America is basically Washington, D.C. That's where it all comes from. And Congress, they're in charge of laws of the United States of America. So what they did after that, they decided, well, that's not good enough. So what they did is they put laws of the United States of America in the closet, Joe. All right? And what they took out is public law. Now, if you go to Black's Law Dictionary, whether it could be volume 4 or volume 5, public law, Joe, means that anybody who's a citizen of the United States, that's you, Jazz, and Don, and everybody else that's listening, go look at it. You're a slave. That's what the attorneys have done to us under public law. They made us all slaves except for myself because I changed my status. But don't believe me now. Go check it out, Joe. That's what attorneys have been doing to us for years and years and years. You think, I'll tell you what. Maybe out of 100, there's probably about maybe 3 or 4 that are great. They'll fight for us, but the other 95, forget it. They're against us. Always have been. Check it out, Joe.
Okay.
Believe me.
All right.
Public law means that we're slaves.
All right. Well, I have to run. I've got some phone calls in a little bit of time.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, folks. 508.
Check that one out, Joe.
All right, man. 508-871-7000. Hey, Scott's been holding on. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Mangiacotti. How are you?
Good, sir. And yourself?
Good, sir. And yourself?
Well, I'm happy. I'll tell you why I'm happy. I'm happy that Reddit's day traders shorted GameStop and AMC on Robinhood, and I'm very happy that Wall Street now knows how it feels to be swindled. Wall Street got everything it deserved and then some. And I'll tell you another thing is, they're hypocrites. They're a bunch of damn hypocrites, and I'll tell you why. Because let's just take a look at the whole picture here. Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase has deliberately suppressed the price of precious metals like gold and silver. That's not an opinion, that's a fact, to keep them low, to keep the U.S. dollar high. Lloyd Blankfein of Goldman Sachs and Larry Fink of BlackRock also play their games. You remember Bernie Madoff, don't you?
Of course. Yeah. And he's,
yeah,
$55
billion stolen from his clients.
Billionaire hedge. I mean, not only did he, play the games and when they're in that club, Scott, right? When those Wall Street guys are in that club, and they have billions of dollars at their fingertips, and they're swaying, trends, and they're breaking companies, putting companies out of business by how they buy stock. Then you have the Bernie Madoff people who ran a Ponzi scheme. I mean, he was just a house of cards. But
2 minutes.
He ran, he
Terrible.
led the life of a multi-billionaire. I mean, the guy had the mansions and the jets and the jewels and the lifestyle, which, of course, it doesn't matter.
He's evil.
When we're all dead, we're all dead. It doesn't matter. But he was evil. He took money from people knowing, and it's not the same thing as taking money and investments going bad, 9/11 hitting and your portfolio goes down. This is a guy who took money, stole money, conned people out of money. He conned companies out of pension funds, and then he used that money in a house of cards. That's evil. That's big-time evil stuff. I agree 100% with you, right? I mean, he devastated people's lives. He did more damage than any little jamoke
Yeah.
with a bandana
1 minute.
around his face can do.
Yeah.
But
Can you hold me over till after the break because I wanted to finish up what I wanted to say?
Yeah, we have.
If I wait,
you got a
'cause I
minute.
have a
You got a
few-
minute before I get a break. So get into it, and then we'll go to hold.
All right. Yeah. All right. Venture capitalists like Steve Cohen, Paul Singer. Paul Singer, I want to bring up. You know who he is, or do your listeners know who he is?
I don't know who Paul Singer
Name
is.
ring a bell?
No.
But you know what Cabela Sporting Goods are? You've
Yeah.
heard of that,
Oh
Cabela.
yeah, big time. Yeah.
Yeah. He destroyed that company. That was a viable, strong company, a healthy company, not a sick company, and he destroyed it, Mr. Mangiacotti. And how? Because he's called the so-called venture capitalist.
We got about
He's
15
really a
seconds.
vulture. Yeah.
Okay. Hey,
I'll
Scott,
wait till the,
I have to
till the
break
break.
because of the
Yeah.
bottom of the hour break, folks. So, Scott, you
I
can go
know.
on hold. We're going to take a quick break. I think out with Joe, and we got a new Find a Forever Home, a new puppy that needs their forever human. I got a few words to say on the impeachment when we come back, so stick with us here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show. I am Joe Mangiacotti.
This is Out with Joe.
I like bread and butter. I like toast and jam. That's what baby feeds me. I'm her loving man.
Hey, Joe, is it Jen or Patrick that's going to be on the show
Welcome
today?
to
Both
this
of them you
edition
had
of Joe
listed
from
for
the
Sunday.
Insurance Studios.
Jennifer's
Brought to you by
today.
Nothing Bun Cakes in White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. On this
Okay,
week's
I'll give
edition,
her a
we're gonna
call
take
at
look
7
the
then.
Status of the Friendly's Restaurant Group. Friendly's Restaurants are now under new ownership. The sale of more than 100 corporate-owned and franchised restaurant locations to a Connecticut-based entity of restaurant operators and investors was finalized this past week. Friendly Ice Cream Corporation, the Western Massachusetts-based
Lord,
parent
Joe.
company of Friendly's Restaurants, announced in November that the company entered into a sale agreement with the Amici Partners Group. The president and CEO of Amici, Greg Eldridge, said that the investors of Amici Partners have been involved with the Friendly's restaurant brand in many capacities over the years, not only as owner-operators and leaders in the system, but also as longtime loyal customers of this iconic brand. Under the new ownership, the company will work to reestablish Friendly's as a family-friendly destination and introduce both new ice cream flavors and other menu offerings. Eldridge went on to say that Friendly's holds a special place in the hearts of many of its loyal patrons, and that they look forward to nurturing the legacy and creating new programs and menu items to meet the changing needs of their customers. There are 130 franchise and corporate locations. Amici is expected to retain the staff at the corporate-owned locations, but the staffing decisions at the franchise locations are determined at the local level, and they have nothing to do with that. As part of the sale process, the company filed for bankruptcy under Chapter 11 in a bankruptcy plan back in 2011. Now, that closed 63 restaurants, including 5 in Western Massachusetts, Federal Street in Greenfield, East Street in Chicopee, Wilbraham Road in Springfield, Main Street in Ware, and Westfield Street in West Springfield. Over the past decade, more than 300 Friendly's restaurant locations have closed. It has opened new locations in recent years, including at the Apex Center in Marlboro. Friendly's sold its retail ice cream and manufacturing business to a Dallas, Texas-based Dean Foods company back in 2016 for $155 million. Dean sells ice cream to supermarkets and the Friendly's ice cream restaurants. Now, brothers S. Presley and Curtis Blake founded Friendly. The possessive wasn't added until years later in 1935 in Springfield, and then it grew the company quickly in the years following. The company has sold to Hershey Foods in 1979. It has changed several times in the decades since. For more dining and entertainment news, click outwithjoe.com and follow us on social media at OutWithJoe. We're suspending the Music Minute for the time being for obvious reasons. Out with Joe has been brought to you by Nothing Bun Cakes in White City Plaza in Shrewsbury on Facebook and Nothing Bun Cakes Shrewsbury. Have you heard of the hottest new bakery around? I know you heard about it right here. My friend Al has opened Nothing Bundt Cake in the White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. Nothing Bundt Cake is a bakery chain and is locally owned and operated by my friend Al. They have bundt cakes ranging from bite-sized to tiered, plus platters, candles, and cards. For any occasion, function, or just to have around the house or office, stop by and check them out. Everything is baked from scratch and on site. Nothing beats a sweet surprise. And until you try one of Al's bundt cakes, you haven't tried a real bundt cake. Stop by and ask for Al, tell him Joe told you to stop by. 98 Boston Turnpike, White City Plaza near Planet Fitness, Shrewsbury, and on Facebook as well, Nothing But Cake Shrewsbury. This is Find a Forever Home for Teddy's Friends, brought to you by Cantiani Insurance Group with locations at 318 Plantation Street and East Douglas Insurance at 306 Main Street, Douglas, and anytime at CantianiAgency.com. This week's candidate, Charlie, is brought to us by Bay Path Humane Society of Hopkinton. This handsome guy is ready to meet his new family. Charlie is an active and fun guy who is ready for adventure. He has done well with other dogs and loves to be with people. Charlie enjoys playtime, treats, hikes in the woods, and some more treats. Charlie is smart and eager to please, but will need consistency to work through his behavior. He would not do well in an apartment or with city living. Charlie needs a home with a fenced-in yard, as he is still getting used to walking on a leash. If you're looking for an active buddy to join your family, please check out baypathhumane.org. Go to Teddy Goodpup's Facebook page for links and more details. Find Your Forever Home is brought to you by the Cantiani Insurance Group, with locations at 318 Plantation Street and East Douglas Insurance, at 306 Main Street, Douglas, and anytime at 508-791-2088.
To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Joe Mangiacotti.
Joe, I'm putting you live.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Joe Mangiacotti
All right, folks.
Show. Second
To the Joe
hour of the first hour here on the Saturday edition. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Don't forget we're live streaming on the TuneIn app as well as our Facebook page. I want to turn my attention to this farce of an impeachment trial that's happening. And I want to talk a little bit about Joe Biden's hypocrisy. Joe Biden widely praised for his inaugural call to unity, and he's repeated it several times at those very controlled and limited speeches, calling half of the country everything from racist to stupid. And he was recently asked about the forthcoming highly divisive Senate trial of Donald Trump. And he responded by saying, I think it has to happen. But this process shouldn't be confused with the impeachment in our Constitution. Yes, the impeachment in our Constitution. You know, the one under Article 1, Section 3, and Article 2, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. The appropriate term for what we're watching play out in our nation's capital is a show trial. The mock judicial proceedings carried out by tyrants.
You're
such
just
as
a little
Stalin
bit
after he took
distorted.
power. Now, if you think that's dramatic, if you think that sounds way over the top, let's consider what recently happened in the House of Representatives. The President of the United States was, quote, impeached, unquote, I'm doing the air quotes, with no investigation, no evidence, and none of the due process, none of the normal due process, nothing. The same rights that every citizen's guaranteed, nothing was presented or done in this momentous and rare decision that it requires to be done. And not to be outdone, see, the Senate will now hold a completely unconstitutional trial, much more worthy of a banana republic than the greatest constitutional republic in the history of the planet. Let's take a look at what a show trial is, right? A show trial is a public trial in which the judicial authorities have already determined the guilt and or innocence of the defendant. The actual trial has its only goal in the presentation of both the accusation and the verdict to the public, so they would serve as both an impressive example and a warning to other would-be dissidents or transgressors. Does this sound a little familiar, folks? Are you seeing, some comparisons here? Now, ironically, 150 communist sympathizers from the United States entertainment industry, they signed a statement supporting Stalin's show trials. And we have the modern-day equivalent of 150 legal scholars, again, quote, unquote, who have done the same in support of this Pelosi-Schumer show trial, this sham. And just like the disgraced New York Times reporter Walter Duranty giving legitimacy to Stalin's fake justice, we have the press falling right into step, right into lockstep behind the leftists. Even a columnist from CNN recently wrote that truth and reconciliation process were always an important part of recovery for a nation that had gone to war with itself. But see, what she fails to point out is that these truth trials were often a ploy of communist dictators to consolidate their power. So in case you doubt the real intent, you need only see her conclusion. The trials are an important part of helping people finally realize their guilt against their country by supporting Trump. This modern-day purge by leftists lacks all legitimacy. Despite all their fervent claims, there's no precedence for impeaching a president after he or she leaves that office. See, the Founding Fathers were extremely meticulous in the shaping of the language. We've seen this throughout the Constitution. Right? They're very, very meticulous, very careful about the verbiage that they used. And they made sure impeachment only applied to, and I am quoting, the president, unquote, not a former president. The mockery of this impeachment is demonstrated by the fact that Chief Justice John Roberts washed his hands of this issue, saying he has no constitutional requirement to preside over an impeachment not involving a sitting president. Duh. Right there, the sitting Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States is saying that he has no constitutional requirement to preside over an impeachment of a private citizen. He's not a sitting president, and the Constitution calls for the Chief Justice to preside over such a hearing. Not to be deterred, they then decided, you know what, we're going to put Senator Patrick Leahy in charge. He's the longest sitting member of this body. He's our Democratic friend to the north in Vermont. So he will preside over the proceedings, and you're hearing that right. Now, he was hospitalized, so that's going to change up. But the accusers are now the judge and the jury in this impeachment trial. Isn't that convenient? That works out marvelously for them, doesn't it? The judge and jury. Contrast this rush to judgment and elimination of due process against actual historical precedent. See, for example, during the Clinton presidency, it involved a 4-year investigation with a final report citing 11 grounds for impeachment, including perjury and witness tampering. Even then, the House still held extensive debate, lasting more than 2 months. The Senate trial took more than a month before finally acquitting President Clinton. During the impeachment of President Andrew Johnson, it took nearly 2 weeks of House deliberation before impeachment, followed by almost 3 months of due process in the Senate trial. And of course, there's the precedent of Richard Nixon, whose resignation brought all House impeachment proceedings to a halt, because they knew full well that you can't impeach someone who isn't the president. Yet Biden and his cohorts are now showing they'd rather emulate the fake judicial machinations of dictators than follow the well-established process laid out by the Constitution and former examples of judicial process. In all of this travesty, where is the opposition party? Where have the Republicans been in all of this, folks? Well, Senator Rand Paul, thank goodness for him, forced a vote on the unconstitutionality of this impeachment. The party that sells itself on being the champions of the Constitution and had been standing quietly aside, hoping this latest white-hot purge would burn itself out before it reached them. But it's already reached them. But the good Senator Paul, he brought a flamethrower to the floor. Here's some of his speech. I can't play the whole thing because it's far too long, but a few minutes of some of the best parts of it. Senator Rand Paul on the floor of the Senate.
This impeachment is nothing more than a partisan exercise designed to further divide the country. Democrats claim to want to unify the country, but impeaching a former president, a private citizen, is the antithesis of unity. Democrats brazenly appointing a pro-impeachment Democrat to preside over the trial is not fair or impartial and hardly encourages any kind of unity in our country. No, unity is the opposite of this travesty we are about to witness. If we are about to try to impeach a president, where is the Chief Justice? If the accused is no longer president, where is the constitutional power to impeach him? Private citizens don't get impeached. Impeachment is for removal from office, and the accused here has already left office. Hyper-partisan Democrats are about to drag our great country down into the gutter of rancor and vitriol, the likes of which has never been seen in our nation's history. Instead of doing the nation's work with their new majorities in the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, Democrats are wasting the nation's time on a partisan vendetta against a man no longer in office. It's almost as if they have no ability to exist except in opposition to Donald Trump. Without him as their boogeyman, they might have to legislate and to actually convince Americans that their policy prescriptions are the right ones. This sham of an impeachment will ostensibly ask whether the president incited the reprehensible behavior and violence of January 6th, when he said, "I know everyone here will soon march to the Capitol to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard." Peacefully and patriotically, hardly words of violence.
Oh, but don't worry, folks. He also pointed out the hypocrisy of the left.
But what of Democrat words? What of Democrat incitement to violence? No Democrat will honestly ask whether Bernie Sanders incited the shooter that nearly killed Steve Scalise and volunteer coach. The shooter nearly pulled off a massacre. I was there because he fervently believed the false and inflammatory rhetoric spewed by Bernie and other Democrats, such as the Republican health care plan for the uninsured is that you die. As this avowed Bernie supporter shot Steve Scalise, nearly killing him, and shot one of our coaches and 2 or 3 of our staff, he screamed, "This is for health care. Ask me or anyone if that's incitement." No Democrat will ask whether Cory Booker incited violence when he called for his supporters to get up in their face of Congress people, a very visual and specific incitement. No Democrat will ask whether Maxine Waters incited violence when she literally told her supporters, and I quote, that if you see a member of the Trump administration at a restaurant, at a department store, at a gas station, or any place, you create a crowd and you push back on them. Is that not incitement? My wife and I were pushed and surrounded and screamed at by this same type of mob that Maxine likes to inspire. It's terrifying to have a swarm of people threatening to kill you, cursing at you, and literally holding you hostage until police come to your rescue. That night we were assaulted by the crowd. I wasn't sure if we'd survive even with the police protection. But no Democrat has ever considered impeaching Maxine for her violent rhetoric. In fact, Republicans, to our credit, have never once thought it legitimate to formally censor or impeach these Democrats. No Republican has sought to use the government to hold these Democrats responsible for Antifa and Black Lives Matter violence that has consumed our cities all summer, resulting in over $1 billion of destruction, looting, and property damage. Not one Republican said, "Oh, let's impeach the Democrats who are inciting this," because it would be ridiculous. But impeaching or censoring or expelling a member of Congress you disagree with? Is the truth so narrow that only you know the truth? We now have the media on your side saying there is only one set of facts, one set of truth, and you can only interpret it this way. Now we have 7 senators on the other side trying to expel, censor, or impugn 2 senators on this side. And I defend them, not because I defend their position. I disagreed with their position. But you can't impeach, censor, expel people you disagree with. What's this coming to?
So, folks, for simply asking for a discussion and debate on the merits of election results, members of Congress and the former president are being threatened with disqualification from ever running for office again, prosecution, and even jail. objection to electors was called democracy at work by Speaker Nancy Pelosi when she used this important procedure in the past presidential elections. But now any dissent is labeled insurrection. So if the election leaders actually believe that the same folks who are committed to pursuing a former president to the ends of the earth will suddenly stop their pursuit, they're foolish and feckless, just beyond clueless. After this, they'll come for every elected representative who refuses acquiescence to their plans for America. And then they'll come for the everyday American, that's you and me. They're already canceling any citizen who gets too noisy or objects too loudly to the party narrative. And the rest of us, they'll handle through policies and regulations. Anyone who loves freedom should be in full throttle opposition against the shameless move by the agents of the purge. Senator Paul's repudiation of this sham, joined by 44 other senators, was a good start, folks. Leaders are slowly emerging from this chaos, and more Americans than ever are asking the right questions and looking for ways to be part of the solution. The unmitigated and extreme efforts to silence half of America won't go unanswered. It may be just the jolt necessary for patriots to regroup and re-engage in the entire constitutional process, the election process. Let's not forget one of my favorite heroes, and the guy I would ask to have dinner with in that old question, anybody living or dead, who would you want to have dinner with? Benjamin Franklin has always been my answer. And he reminded us, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. 508-871-7000. And to join us by text is 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. Or email us at textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. So Senator Rand Paul is the only guy that said, hey, look, this is just ridiculous. You cannot have this witch hunt, this political and this electronic and political lynching because you have different political views. It's ridiculous. And they are coming. Now we see big tech. The only difference between what happens in CCP in communist China is it's the state who actually does it here. The proxy for the state is the big tech who's doing it. And I've had this argument now for years that Section 230 has to be addressed. Yet smaller companies who are trying to emerge, like Parler, is saying they do need the 230 in place because they'll never be able to get to that point that Google and Facebook and Twitter, they have the money to afford mountains of lawyers, high-priced lawyers, to fend off. Parler does not. Rumble does not. These alternative sources or platforms, I should say, they do not. But there has to be a day of reckoning when it comes to big tech. And you have both sides of the aisle wanting to do this for different reasons. But whatever the reason, fortunately, they're coming to the table and they have the same goal in mind, and that is to rein in these big boys, these big tech boys. 508-871-7000. Scott, I know you've been waiting a long time. Sorry for that, but it was kind of a planned monologue that I had to get done.
No, I understand.
And so
I
let us go back to
so-
Wall Street if you'd like. In the gist of this, folks, is Wall Street is it reaches into and controls every aspect of our life, even if you are not a big investor, even if you're not playing the market. It doesn't matter. You have retirements, don't you, folks? Right? Those pension funds have to sit somewhere. All right. So whether you think you're in the market or you're not in the market, trust me, you're in the market. Plus, the activities of these people, what they do on a daily basis, plays into our daily lives. And as far as what happened with this GameStop and Reddit situation, they're just, I always said this, Scott, and I'm sure you've heard me say this, is there's old money and new money, right? And new money is the nouveau rich, right, is not really accepted by old money. And the reason for that is new money is just old money that got away. And they have had the system rigged and set in their favor for so long, and that they just will not tolerate anybody else coming in. Who do these people think they are, Scott, to make billions of dollars off of their own game? They want some of these people
they're
to
crooks.
go to
They
jail.
are crooks. Yeah, they need to go to jail. All of them need to go to jail. All of them. And talking about going to jail, this hits home for me because on 2008, September 15th, 2008, I got a call from our broker, and you remember Lehman Brothers, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Lehman Brothers, yeah. Went under $190,000 in common stock, vaporized. We never got a dime back. And Richard Fold was the CEO of Lehman Brothers, and he's a crook. No one ever. He has a big mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut somewhere. Nobody ever knocked on his door. Nobody came after him. Just like nobody came after, other than Bernie Madoff. Nobody's coming after Jamie Dimon. Nobody's coming after Steve Cohen or Carl Icahn. They've destroyed these companies. They're crooks. And Mr. Mangiacotti, when I lost that money, my father lost that money from Lehman Brothers, Richard Fold. He's an international Jewish banker. He never went to jail. None of these other bankers went to jail, and they never will. If you and me rob a bank for just $10, we go to prison. The cops know what to do with us. These guys in their pinstripe suits and making hundreds of billions of dollars, no one touches them. No one ever touched them.
You got it. You're right, 100%. Right. We have a big problem with this because the laws are in the favor of politicians. They're in favor of big big banks in Wall Street. So they have it. I get that 100%. Thank you for the call, Scott. I appreciate it. All right, folks, 508-871-7000. Feel free to give us your take on the situation with GameStop. But more importantly, what was going on with the Reddit in the different platforms. And then the big tech companies, they stepped in and they froze accounts. They froze the ability for them to communicate with each other. But then you had the apps who were supposed to be for the little guy stopping and telling them to stop the action. You couldn't buy and you couldn't sell. So they came in and they did this, and Wall Street did this. And the question is, who gave that order? So what is this like? I mean, I heard an analogy done. I think Jesse Waters did this analogy. It'd be like LeBron James is playing the worst high school team that there is out there, right? So you put the high school team, these amateurs out there against LeBron James, but somehow they coordinate their game, right? They do a good job, and they're up by 30 points. It would be like the referee stopping the game and letting LeBron James throw free throws until he's ahead in the game. And that's what happened with GameStop in the market. So my question is, who decided to stop that? So if you are just a trader, a day trader, a small guy, and you're doing well, what? They're going to come in and just stop your game? Say, no, you're not one of us. You can't make a lot of money. Now, Elizabeth Warren's calling for the investigation in these day traders to be investigated and put into jail. Well, what about the billionaire hedge fund people who drive businesses out of existence? Again, there's a fine line here. It's one thing to look at the market and say there's a pretty good chance of brick and mortar companies going out. I'm gonna short the stock and hope that I can hold on to it long enough to make some money. But these people forced a short stock sale. They lost billions of dollars, and they don't like it. So were they listening to big tech? Were they listening to politicians? Who was it that gave the order for that? All right, we're just a few minutes away from the top of the hour, and when that happens, we'll take a break, but we'll come back on the other side with Jennifer Kerns. She is the host
You got
of
1 minute.
the very newly nationally syndicated show called All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns. She has some good GOP credentials to talk to us about, but we'll also talk about a lot of the executive orders, right? The executive orders being signed against police officers. Oh, and banning words, right? We can't say China virus anymore, right? And illegal immigrants. And I think there's some others out there. I mean, this is beyond Orwellian at this point, folks. Beyond Orwellian. They're literally rewriting the dictionary to limit our ability to communicate and our ability to think and not to use words. So they're all perfectly legal words, but because they feel that they these what they love to call dog whistles or negative connotations, that they aren't going to allow us to use them anymore. Think about that.
15 seconds.
Think about that. They will not allow us to use words in our own vocabulary. All right, folks, we're going to take a break here at AM 830 WCRN and AM 730 WACE, of course, live streaming in the TuneIn application. I am Joe Mangiacotti. Stick with us.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
7 o'clock.
Hey, folks, Joe Mangiacotti from the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, talk radio is the immune system to the partisan, bias, political rhetoric attacking us on a daily basis. Get inoculated. The Joe Mangiacotti Show is your vaccine. Join me weekend mornings, 6 to 8.
Golden Group Roofing is a community brand. From our Master Elite roofers and industry partners to our clients, every single person represents the Golden Group standard. We strive every day to make your home's needs a priority because Golden Group invests in you and your communities. With unbeatable craftsmanship, customer satisfaction, reasonable pricing, Golden Group Roofing stands above the rest. Having been awarded GAF Master Elite Contractor, Certainty Select Shingle Master, and GAF Energy Certified Solar, Golden Group Roofing is 100% worthy of your investment. Experience the Golden Group difference, where hands protect what matters most. Visit us at goldengrouproofing.com or call us at 508-873-1884. 508-873-1884.
I want to tell you what Cantiani Insurance has been able to do for me and Teddy. We stopped in to see Paul Sr. and the great staff at 318 Plantation Street. They've been handling my car and business insurance for years. Teddy was making his way around the office, and they let me know. They now offer pet insurance. For a fraction of what one visit to the vet was for Teddy, they could cover him for a whole year. I know you treat your furry family members like any other family member, and as well as I do Teddy. The professional staff at Cantiani has been providing courteous service for over 40 years, with integrity and personalized service, making sure that your insurance actually protects you and your family. With 2 locations, the 318 Plantation Street in Worcester and East Douglas Insurance Agency, located at 306 Main Street in Douglas. For home, auto, business insurance, and now pet insurance, click CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088. 508-791-2088.
Hi, I'm Joe Mangiacotti. You know me from my radio shows and on-air contributions. But beyond that, I'm the president and owner of a second-generation private investigation firm, CIS and Associates, based right here in Massachusetts. The security and investigation industry has changed in many ways my father didn't even imagine when he began the agency over 3 decades ago. Private security and private protection is the fastest-growing segment of the private security industry. Personal private protection is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business. At CIS, we have a specialized sector, the Templar Division. This is the department tasked with the security and protection of individuals, often in cooperation with government agencies. But we offer highly trained and experienced body people for executives, government officials, and their families. If you are in need of a highly specialized service, I'd encourage you to reach out to CIS and ask for the Templar Division. You can call us directly at 508-296-5445, 508-296-5445, or email newenglandinvestigators@gmail.com.
You're live.
All right, folks. All right, folks. The Joe Mangiacotti Show, second hour of the show as we wrap up the Saturday edition, the final Saturday of January. Wow, already. So next Saturday we kick off a new month, and February, right? The short month, and it is also Black Awareness Month. So I'm sure we'll hear a lot from the BLM crowd, and we'll go from there. But you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available. Don't forget our text line also at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. And we're on AM 830 WCRN, our affiliate, AM 730 WACE, as well as live streaming in the TuneIn app. But right now, as promised, let me invite into the conversation Jennifer Kerns, who is the host of the new nationally syndicated radio show called All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns. She also has served as a GOP strategist and spokeswoman for the California Republican Party. I got to ask her about that. That's going to be a weird job. Strategist for the Colorado recalls over the Second Amendment, and she's a writer and researcher, actually for the most watched U.S. presidential debate of 2016, right? Hillary Clinton. That was on the Fox News cycle. So let me invite into the conversation Jennifer. Jennifer, good morning, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe. Good morning.
Good morning. I thank you for getting up early on a on a Saturday morning. You're in an earlier time zone, I believe, right? So thank you very much. I appreciate that greatly.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here for my inaugural visit.
Yes, I hope it's one of many, and congratulations on the new show. Take a second, tell me about that. So where is it going to be on? Nationally syndicated, called All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns, and where's your flagship station, and where's it going to be out of?
You know, we're so excited. We just added Los Angeles, 790 KABC out in Los Angeles, which reaches about 30 million people in Los Angeles, Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, and parts of northern San Diego. We're also on Denver, 710 KNUS, which is the Salem affiliate, Colorado Springs, and Tennessee, and a couple of other places. So we're very, very excited. And look, in the vein of Biden unity, we called it All American Radio because we're all Americans, and that's what we're focused on is, you know, sort of how to move the country forward to help benefit all Americans, not just, you know, not just the red, not just the blue, but everybody and doing what's best for America.
Well, let's talk about that because that was in his speech. And folks, by the way, I tagged that in my social media on Facebook and Twitter, so you're very easy that you can find Jennifer through my pages as well. But let's talk about that because Joe Biden has said, you know, it's time for unity, and I'm going to be president to all Americans. But in the not the next day or the same speech, he then talks about the 75 plus a million Americans who voted for Donald Trump, and that they need to, you know, they're racist and they're stupid. And how can you have unity if he doesn't actually believe it? And does he believe it, or is he doing the teleprompter? Is he a puppet?
You know, look, I think his inauguration day speech was full of platitudes. Certainly, I don't know if he really meant what he said. Here's what I think is going on in the Biden administration. I think he's having significant problems. He already is having problems with 1/3 of independents. So an NBC News poll, which is no conservative rag, you know, NBC is about as far left as you can get. So this is pretty damning, Joe. Not only do 73% of Republicans believe that Biden and his friends actually stole the election, but 1/3 of independents have now joined that theory. And that's problematic for Biden because Biden, for the last 4 decades in Washington, has prided himself that he's a guy who independent voters really like. He can always cross the aisle and work with his friends. He doesn't have that going into his first 100 days of his administration. I think that's why we're seeing as many executive orders as we are. The Biden camp knows He doesn't have any Republican support, and he's lost about a third of independents. I think that's what's going on there.
Well, absolutely. I mean, he's had a record number of executive orders, Jennifer. Record number, right? I mean, no other president has ever done this. He said during the campaign, when referencing Donald Trump, that any president who leads by executive orders is a dictator. Absolutely. And the problem with executive orders, right? They don't have the power of law in the sense they're not permanent. They didn't go through the legislature. They haven't been debated. And one of my biggest issues that I've had since day one, when he signed a record 17 executive orders on day one, Jennifer, is there was absolutely no explanation. There was no reasoning of this. There was no, okay, other than we know that a lot of them were just because Trump did them, that he's reversing them because they were Trump executive orders. But you would think with that many executive orders, and I don't care if it's 17 or 1. I think that the guy signing those should give the American people a little reasoning as to why that needs to be done, and why he just isn't sending it to the chamber, to the branch that actually makes laws, or Congress, and saying, here is what I'd like you to do. Here's the bill. You guys debate it. You pass it. Send it to my desk. I sign it. It's actually law and not an executive order that nobody's challenging. That's an idea.
Well, there's an idea, and look, that idea is enshrined in our Constitution. You would think that the Democratic Party, having won the U.S. House, the U.S. Senate, and the White House, hey, that party could actually work together pretty easily to pass pretty much whatever bill they wanted. This, I think, is the key. Joe Biden doesn't want your permission, and I think that's the key. As you said, he signed 17 in his first day. Within 3 days, Joe, he signed more than 36, and now he signed almost 50. Here's how it stacks up by comparison. George W. Bush only signed 2 executive orders within his first several weeks of office. Bill Clinton, a fellow Democrat, only signed 2 within his first several weeks in office. President Trump, who Biden criticized for signing executive orders, actually only signed 4 in his first 7 or 8 weeks in office. So that's how it stacks up to Biden's nearly 50. Here's the one that concerned me the most. A lot of them did, but here's the one that concerned me the most. I thought this was un-American. There's one, the one that rejoins the Paris Climate Accord. In Section 7C of that one, in the fine print, it actually allows China and the Communist Party access to the American power grid. That's something that reverses Trump's executive order that he did on May 1st of 2020 of last year, saying, look, no equipment that feeds into our American power supply can come from a foreign nation that's hostile to us, countries like China. And Joe Biden reversed that, and that was in the fine print. Hardly anybody in the mainstream media covered that. I think these are very concerning. Here's what's even more concerning, Joe. I think the reason they're not asking permission and they're doing all of this by executive fiat, they're not even getting started yet. They're just getting warmed up. I think what he's saving the legislature for, Congress for, is things like stacking the Supreme Court and all the bigger things. These are just small potatoes, these executive orders. Let's wait and see what's in store when Congress really gets revved up. You're going to be in for a doozy.
Well, I agree that he's going to use Congress for some of the big things, including, the court issue and, stacking the court. Of course, it's funny to hear people, during the final days of the Trump administration and so forth, what some people thought stacking the court meant. But let's put a pin in that for a moment. He's also going to deal with or trying to make, Washington, D.C. a state, things of that nature to increase what they assume will be Democrat senators and so forth. But that aside, going back to the executive orders, I think a big part of that, Jennifer, is he's immediately placating the left, right? He has to satisfy that. And I don't think he is, right? He's never going to satisfy those ultra-left, because no matter what you agree to, what you give them, they're always going to want more, right? They're just going to want more. During the inauguration, media wasn't covering, right, the Molotov cocktails at the Portland courthouse and the destruction that's going on. You saw none of that on the mainstream media. But going back to the executive orders, I agree. The Paris Accord, Climate Accord, joining that again, I don't understand what any benefit of that. The power grid part, yes, that went on notice, right? And I'm glad you brought that up. People don't know what's in some of this stuff. And first of all, when you get to the Paris, what does that say? Because we, the United States, have already surpassed the reduction in carbons that we promised we would do when we entered it, by the way. So we're already ahead of it. But then what does it mean? All that is that there was no uniform goals to be met here, Jennifer, right? Every nation just kind of wrote up their own thing, put it on a piece of paper. They stapled them all together. They said, this is the Paris Climate Accord. That's it. And none of these nations that are huge polluters, China, India, right? They just committed to do what they were doing anyway. They didn't commit any pain to this. And then we have to kick in a lot of money, but countries that are called emerging countries, right, like China, for some reason, they're kicking in a fraction of what we are. So what's the benefit of the Paris Climate Accord? What does it actually do? When everybody isn't committed to do the same thing at the same time, it just seems like it's, handicapping American businesses. Or did I see that wrong?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, look, that is an uneven playing field that penalizes America and like-minded countries while letting, big polluters like China and India off the hook, and it's unfair. And you're striking on something here that I think some people don't, because you're a guy, you came up through the Tea Party movement, your first show. Look, you're striking on something here. There is discord on the left in Biden's own party, and that actually might be what the executive orders are about, because he does have to pay back the left wing of his party who allowed him to get elected. Remember, they did that to Bernie Sanders. They took it away from Bernie Sanders. They gave it to Hillary Clinton. Again, they robbed Bernie Sanders of the nomination. Again, gave it to Joe Biden. Payback is the rule in Washington, D.C., and payback is always due on arrival in D.C., right? And so there is discord in the left wing of the party. I think these 46 executive orders have a lot to do with Joe Biden's trying to send a signal to the left flank of his party. Look, I'm with you. Don't attack me. I need you. Yep. Look at all these great liberal things I'm doing. But guess what? You know this because you've got your ear to the grassroots. It's not ever going to be enough for the AOCs of the world and the Bernie Sanders of the world. They'll continue to push him. The mainstream media, all they want to talk about is how Liz Cheney is fighting with the rest of the Republican caucus. The real fight is always in the Democratic Party, but the media will never cover it. But there's a big crack there. I think that's what's behind a lot of the executive orders.
Wow. Certainly are. And yeah, Bernie Sanders, right? I mean, 3 houses later, this guy, I mean, twice he came so close. I mean, the Bernie bros, they seem to really show their anger in 2016, but did they seem to react differently this time around? Was that maybe because promises were made and signals were sent from Bernie Sanders? I don't know. How did you read this one? How'd you read him losing in the 2020 versus 2016?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt about it. The Bernie bros were outwardly more upset, politically in 2016. But I think most of the Bernie bros have actually gone underground. They've joined Antifa. They've joined, the Chaz in Seattle and Portland. They've done other things with their angst and their anger. They said in 2020 that if Bernie Sanders didn't get his way, they were going to burn Milwaukee down. Well, guess what? COVID-19 happened. There was no DNC convention in Milwaukee. It was all virtual. And so Joe Biden took full advantage of that, right? He took advantage of it. He did a virtual DNC convention. He did a virtual inauguration, so he couldn't really be protested. So it's been hook, line, and sinker for Joe Biden ever since. He hasn't really had to contend with those protests. But the moment he compromises with the Republicans, it's over for Joe Biden on that left flank of his party.
Yeah. Good point, right? Very, very good point, because the moment it's perceived that he's even working with the other side of the aisle, they will go ballistic on him. One of the other executive orders I think we got to spend a minute on is the reversal of the Keystone Pipeline. This is so it's asinine. It's eliminating hundreds of thousands of jobs, the money, and then the fact that the oil that the pipeline is responsible for transporting from our allies to the north to down to us is going to be done other ways, trucking, which is less effective and causes far more CO2 because trucks, right? You can fit a heck of a lot more crude oil in tankers on a rail truck than you can in just convoys and convoys of 18-wheeler tanker trucks coming down, all burning gas, all burning, the rubber, just the wear and tear. It's stupid. This stuff doesn't make any sense, Jennifer. The common sense aspect to it. This is a show who prides ourselves on common sense conversation for the common sense citizen. Where is the logic? And this is what I go back to when I said, with this record number of executive orders, why isn't there the reasoning and the explanation as to why he came to these conclusions? It of course leaves us to assume they're all just for the political reasons, like you just pointed out, to placate the left and to signal to them that he's there and he's on them. And please don't be mean to me. I'm going to do this stuff for you. But the Keystone Pipeline, is that one of the most asinine moves that a president can do?
It really is. Look, to kill jobs at a time when millions of Americans are out of work, I think is really, really tone deaf. And to kill jobs when you're trying to get a new stimulus for $1.9 trillion is really, really tone deaf. But again, if you're not really listening to the people and the will of the people from the election, then you don't have to worry about tone deafness. Look, I think there was a big checklist that was given to Joe Biden from the left wing of his party, from AOC. I think he did a mini listening tour, to use a word from Hillary Clinton's past. And I think he spoke with his predecessor, Barack Obama, and said, hey, what would you like to see in my first 100 days? Here's the thing. We're only 10 days into this administration, and we already have nearly 50 executive orders. Imagine how many we're going to have at the end of the first 100 days. It's going to be stunning, and I think it's going to knock your socks off. But look, it's clear this was a laundry list. They hate South Dakota. They hate Kristi Noem, the governor there. They loathe all of that stuff. They loathe capitalism. They loathe the energy industry. And that's really what this is about. I mean, there were people protesting and chaining themselves to the Keystone Pipeline when it was being built. It's really no surprise that this was one of his first actions, but I agree with you. During the time of COVID-19 and lockdowns and people out of jobs and people hungry and driving to food banks, you're going to kill 70,000 jobs. That's probably the most tone deaf of all of the executive orders.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing here that we have happening is the abuse of the executive orders when it comes to actually banning words. Here we are being very Orwellian with our doublespeak, and we saw the House, right, eliminate father, mother, sister, brother, right? We have to use spouse and things that we can't use mother, brother, sister, right? So they've taken that out of the House. We've got now him by executive order eliminating China virus. And I understand the Kung flu, but China virus, really? And Department of Homeland Security, he wants to have conservatives labeled terrorists. What is the danger of these? And who has there ever been a president using an executive order to tell us how we can speak and what words we're allowed to use? I mean, doesn't that just rub our core American fabric?
Well, I think there was, but it might have been in George Orwell's book, 1984.
Yeah, exactly.
That is really chilling. Yeah, that is really chilling. Here's the number one issue I'm hearing about from parents, even in Los Angeles, one of the most liberal cities in America, maybe outside of Boston and New York City. Parents coming to me saying they're most upset about the fact that transgender athletes can now compete against girls, even as young as junior high and high school girls in track meets. And this is going to rob a whole generation of girls their college scholarships and things of that nature. Look, the language police thing, though, it is very frightening. And I'll tell you what, here's what's even more frightening. We broke the news at my news site, allamericannews.com, a couple of days ago. Senior members of the Trump campaign are now getting notices from the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, that their TSA global entry passes have been revoked. Okay, we broke that news. There was a senior Trump official, somebody I've worked with for 10 years in grassroots GOP politics. You would know one of the organizations he's worked for the last 10 years, a great conservative think tank in D.C. As soon as I reported that, I had 7 more people, younger, lower-level Trump staffers, who also came forward and said they, too, got a notice last weekend from the TSA that their TSA pre-checks and global entry passes had been revoked. And so this harkens back to the 2013 era when you had Eric Holder as Attorney General, did the same thing to James O'Keefe in Project Veritas. They put him on the no-fly list. They are really going to weaponize every single division of the U.S. government against conservatives. And if you worked for the Trump White House, you're somehow complicit in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. You're somehow complicit in their hurt feelings for the last 4 years. They're going to take it out on you, and they're going to start by utilizing and weaponizing agencies like the TSA and others. And I think we're entering into a really chilling time in America.
Oh, absolutely, because I think one of the ways that we're going to see the Biden administration go after the Second Amendment is if you start to put people on these no-fly lists and terrorist lists or watch lists, right? That's going to just allow them to buy ammunition, hold their probably not even get one, but take those away from people who have it. So yeah, weaponizing these agencies it's a very scary thought. It's a different world, a different country that we're living in. So TSA now, and I didn't know this, so you broke this. So TSA is being used to take away those passes. Does that mean that they can't travel at all, or just the Easy Pass goes away?
Just the Easy Pass goes away for now, but I predict this is the first salvo in this war. They're going to say, look, if you were even in D.C. at the protest, even the peaceful one, I guarantee you the FBI is going through right now. They've admitted they are tracking the metadata for everybody's phones of the 800,000 people who were in D.C. that day. I think that could spell trouble for some of these folks. Putting people on the no-fly list will restrict people's ability to travel. It will restrict people's ability to go to D.C., for example, and protest this new administration. I think this is all part of their big plan to start squelching the free speech of Americans.
Absolutely. And another thing, because you made reference to the change here, because we have now the biologically or born females, or males rather, then now identifying as females being allowed to participate in school level. So we have in Connecticut, up here in our neck of the woods, Jennifer, 3 female high school runners out of Connecticut.
You got 2 minutes, Joe.
Have filed a federal lawsuit to block the transgender athletes from participating in the girls' sport. And one of the girls I saw, in an interview, Jennifer, and she's like, "Look, I've lost the meets and my titles, my awards here to what she views is a male, and that messes up her scholarships that she would have gotten because she would have won these competitions." So now 3 females have band together, and they're suing the school association in Connecticut. They just recently filed this. So you think we'll see that as a trend in the country?
I do. Look, as I said, parents are deeply concerned about this. And here's the thing. Here's the Democrat Party for the last 40 years has been the party of the feminist rule, right? And now
You got 1 minute.
They're basically attacking young women and their athletic abilities and their opportunities, to get scholarships and go on to college and get their college paid for. They're putting the 1% of the population, I think transgenderism is about 1 to 3% of the general population, above 51% of the population, who are these young ladies. They're robbing them of opportunities, all in the name of political correctness. It's very sad.
Jennifer, can you stay over the break, or do you have to run? Can you stay?
Yeah, sure, I can.
All right, so stay for the break, folks. We're talking to Jennifer Kerns, new host of the nationally syndicated show All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns. Stick with us here in the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We'll be back in a few moments here, folks. Stick with us. Good morning and welcome to Handling Change from the Cantiani Insurance Studios. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and Gary Gay of One Worcester Homes joins us this week. The purchase or sale of your home or investment property could be one of the largest challenges you have, and Gary can help you handle those challenges. Good morning, Gary.
Morning, Joe.
Well, here we are, 2021, rolling right along. Things are picking up a little bit already. I can see that happening. And I think where we left off was really setting the goals and looking at getting ready to make a purchase. But I wanted to zero in a little more on the whole financing part of it. Can you talk to us about that a little bit more?
Yeah, and we've talked about financing from a single family or condo standpoint for a personal purchase. But I think it makes a lot of sense to also on financing on the investment side of things.
Well, Gary, investment is a whole different mindset and a different strategy than purchasing your single primary residence, right? A whole different game, I guess.
Yeah, the goal is a lot different when you're investing, and you also, with that, there's also the financing piece of it that can be very different. My suggestion when talking with investors is to really try to expand that network. You're not looking for one lender that can do everything. A lot of times it's like building out a toolbox of different products and different lenders that you can use in different situations. For example, you're not going to use a hammer to hit in a screw. Might get the job done, but it's probably not the most efficient way to get it done. So for that being said, you want to make sure that you have different options for different styles of investing, whether that's hard money, which has gotten pretty expensive this year, but it is something more traditional. But the products that are available to buy a single family home or even a multifamily that you're going to be living in are going to be much different than the investment products that you're able to get for homes that you will not be living in.
Well, I'm assuming that the old strategy of buying a multi as your first home and primary residence to launch that investing portfolio is still a good path.
Yeah, that's still a very common path where you find a 2 or 3 family or even a 4 family where you can live in it, do some renovations, get the tenants solid, and then use the income from that property and use the equity you're able to build in that property to then purchase your next property.
And then you move on to either another property or you continue living there. What's the best strategy there, Gary? How do you build that, or how do you get the momentum going?
It all depends on your end goal and your niche that you've kind of found yourself in as an investor. Do you like dealing with the multifamilies? You can continue to scale up, whether that's buying other multifamilies or doing what's called a 1031 exchange and exchanging that property tax deferred to a larger property, a larger multifamily building.
And does financing change even if you're owner occupied depending on the number of units?
It does. When you're talking about over 4 units, you are getting into a realm of commercial lending, and that's going to look at more of the performance of the building, not just the performance of the individual purchasing the building.
So when you get to a certain number of units, you're really moving into the building itself is a business, and it has a balance and loss sheet, right? I mean, there's the rents coming in, the expense of the building, and really that's what investor or the money people are going to look at, no?
Exactly. Yep. I'm dealing with one in Gardner right now, and it has been, the bank is looking very closely at the expenses and the tenants and the ability of the tenants to pay on time, because with everything going on in the world right now, that has become a very tough subject where, some places tenants are unable to pay rent, and that can be a sticky situation.
Well, Well, you've got the ability to pay rent. So if they're in an industry, right, I think now you have to look at will they lose a paycheck during a lockdown, as well as moratoriums on the evictions and foreclosures. So that has affected, I would think, the financing world.
It has. They've definitely tightened up, similar to what you saw after 2008. But that's just to be on the side of caution, not because they're thinking that the market is going to take a tremendous downturn, because that doesn't seem to be the case, and it doesn't seem to be any indicators of that currently.
Got it. All right, Gary, that's great information. And of course, anybody can give you a call and talk to you in more detail about this or anything connected to real estate.
Yeah, I'm very confident working with investors. I do it frequently, and I have a lot of experience and a lot of contacts for lenders, contractors, whatever an investor needs to get the job done.
Fantastic. Thanks for stopping by, Gary.
Thanks for having me, Joe, as always.
And thank you for joining us for Handling Change from the Cantiani Insurance Studios. Join us each week at 7:30 as we give you the tools to handle the changes in your life, and visit us at handlingchange.info. And you can find Gary and all of the fantastic realtors at One Worcester Homes, at Facebook at One Worcester Homes, or email them at oneworcesterhomes@gmail.com. And you can call Gary anytime at 413-427-5506. For Gary, I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Joe Mangiacotti.
All right, folks. Here we are. Welcome back to the final segment of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN and our affiliates. Don't forget, we're live streaming on the TuneIn app. If you want to take us anywhere, you can do that by streaming us. You can tell Alexa to play WCRN. She'll do that. And we're also live streaming on our Facebook page, Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. That is actually our handle for all of our social media platforms. Our guest right now is Jennifer Kerns, who is the host of the new nationally syndicated radio show called All American Radio with Jennifer Kerns. And she has a fantastic background. You served as the GOP strategist, right, in California. I got to think that's a weird job.
Well, it's a tough job, but what people don't realize is how many Republicans actually reside in the state of California. There's 1 million Republicans alone in Los Angeles, which kind of blows people's minds. No, in Los Angeles County, Orange County is probably like 5 times that. But look, you can see now with the recall movement against Gavin Newsom, those Republicans now are starting to wake up. They're starting to see who's really not on their side, and that's Gavin Newsom. I think that state's going to be in for a real treat when this recall gets qualified. What I'm hearing from my sources, people on the ground with the Rescue California organization who's running the recall, is that that they've got the signatures. They're going to turn them in soon, and boy, this is why you see Gavin Newsom this week, just like Andrew Cuomo, reversing his lockdown orders. These two guys are under the gun. They know it, and they're going to start changing their behavior because they're starting to have their constituents figure out what's going on here.
Well, you know, I wasn't planning on talking to you about this, Jennifer, but you mentioned it. Boy, Andrew Cuomo is completely tone deaf here. And this AG's report that they underreported up to 50% of deaths in the nursing homes in New York would be devastating to any other. Imagine if it was a Republican governor this happened under. But he doesn't take any accountability for this. And I get it. The same number of people that have died. But what he was doing is they ship him off to the hospital to die and count it as a hospital death and not a nursing home death, when he didn't use the comfort ship and the Javits Center and had all these hospital beds that never went touched. And he forced these nursing homes to take positive COVID people into the most vulnerable population we have. And he is gigging on TV every day, writing a book, and getting an Emmy for this. Where's the accountability for this guy?
Well, look, his attorney general of his own party, I mean, that's how bad Andrew Cuomo's actions have been. She is gunning for him, and she's exposing that he caused this. Here's the sad thing. He could have just come out and said, look, in the beginning, we failed. We didn't know what we were doing, and here's the reparations, so to speak, that we're going to give to these families who lost family members. And make them whole again because of the mistakes that were made by New York State. But he hasn't done that. Instead, he chose to go on CNN every night and laugh and yuck it up with his brother, the other Cuomo over at CNN, and it's really rubbed people the wrong way. This is why you see people like the Fox News chief meteorologist Janice Dean now being touted as a potential contender for governor against Cuomo. You know, her in-laws, both her mother-in-law and her father-in-law, were killed in a nursing home thanks to Governor Cuomo's COVID orders. She's been sharing that story. I heard she is very seriously considering running against him. Believe me, that will be his worst nightmare to have her breathing down his neck on this issue. But this goes back to the point I said earlier in your show. There's more division in the Democrat Party than the mainstream media will ever let on, and this is proof of it with this Attorney General Letitia James coming after Cuomo now. She's making her move as well for potentially for governor in exposing his COVID nursing home orders.
Oh, absolutely, and I agree with that because the media is basically another branch of the Democratic Party for all intents and purposes. We see them, look at the coverage of Joe Biden as president versus Donald Trump. I mean, did you catch the first couple of press conferences? Those were softballs out there, right? You know, is he going to keep the same color scheme? I mean, come on. But I want to get back to things that are a little bit serious. There was an executive order, and it's dealing with, and I got to be honest with you, the first glance at it, I thought I misread it or it was a typo, because they've exchanged the word equality, which we have come to accept and understand, and I think everybody agrees that equality, meaning that the playing field needs to be even, a level playing field for everybody, to equity. Now, this is the new buzzword, right? Equity that we're seeing. And this seems to be changing things, and there's going to be some pushback. But how do you interpret this? How do you read this? What is equity versus equality going to do to everything at this point?
Well, I think this is a bait and switch. You know, they're using similar words. They think the American people are stupid, and they're saying, hey, we should all have equality, and by that we mean equity. Well, think about this. If you're a private company and you have equity going around in a company, you know, one person might have 20% of the equity, the other person has 10%, but, you know, those pieces of the pie only equal that 100%. They're going to suggest at the end of the day that I believe we're going to see a resurrection of the argument for reparations here, going back, you know, some 400 years. We're going to see them insist that at least at the federal level, which is what they control, you're going to have to give equity out to classes of people to make them whole for potential things that were done in the past where they didn't get equity, and that means, you know, stakes in companies. I believe they're going to go all throughout corporate America and suggest that equity from private companies has to be redistributed, like a Robin Hood situation, to the underserved groups, and that's where it gets really frightening. You can do what you want at the federal level when that's what you're in charge of, but once you start going through the private companies and start interfering with capitalism and how private businesses operate, that's where I get concerned. I think there's a constitutionality issue there. But if you look at how the companies, most of the major companies from Nike to some of the big banks just capitulated and rolled over for BLM and Antifa last summer, it's possible Joe Biden can accomplish this equity and this redistribution of wealth without firing a single shot, proverbially. I mean, the companies might actually just give in to this and help with the redistribution of wealth. So that'll be the interesting thing to watch.
Well, absolutely. I think this is a path to backdoor socialism. I mean, I can't see that as any other way. I know that it was explained to me as thinking of this. I don't know if I can do the visual on Jennifer or not. We'll try. But say you have a baseball field with the fence, and you've got 3 kids watching the game, and they're different ages, so they're different heights. So equality is you give them all a 12-inch high soapbox to stand on. But equity is you give the shorter kid a 24-inch box to stand on so that he can see over the fence. I don't know if I did a good job visually explaining how that is being explained to me. All right? Because when it first came out, and I see, you read an article, equality, whoa, something didn't look right. Let me go back. Oh, no, that's not equality. That's equity. And you see equality, right? Because you expected to see the word equality, didn't you? Right? So you think you see it. And you go back and you go, no, that's actually equality. Equity that they put in there. And you think for a second, you go, well, what the heck do they mean by that? What does equity mean? And I'm a guy with a financial background, so equity to me means a very specific thing. Well, how can we instill equity into policies? It sounds like you've got to give somebody something more. But in the world of equity, unlike the world of equality, there's a finite amount. See, in equality, it's not like a piece of pie, right? If somebody gets, if they have their rights and the equal rights, it doesn't lessen your rights. It's not a pie. But to me, the word equity means to give somebody something, does it have to come away from something else? So what is the reason for using the word equity? So that's the part that scares me, other than a backdooring socialism, because that's everything they're doing, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to describe socialism or hide it under democratic socialist. Well, what's a democratic socialist? When you start breaking it down, well, it sounds pretty socialism to me.
Right.
So
yeah, it is.
Where's this going to go? What's the end game?
Oh, the end game is the redistribution of wealth, because going back to the pie example, if you only have 100% to give out and someone's got 20 and someone's got 80, if you want someone to have 30%, you've got to take another 10 from the person who has 80. So it is a zero-sum game, and that is the capitalist society. But they hate capitalism, and that's where they're going with this. They have found a fancy new word, an intelligent new word, equity, and that's how they're wrapping this socialism package up. The truth is, though, the dirty truth about socialism is it's actually killed 100 million people around the globe in the last 100 years, and that's what they're not telling you. They're wrapping this in equity. They're wrapping this in how can we give people a little more of a hand up or a handout. But the truth is, how socialism ends is a very nasty, nasty game. And like I said, it's killed 100 million people around the world, mostly women and children in the places where it's been enacted. So be afraid, be very afraid. When you hear the word equity, just know that's some fancy wrapping on some Robin Hood socialism that goes to a very, very dark place in the end.
Wow. And the final thing I wanted to ask you about and talk about is this story out about the former White House stenographer, right, for Biden, who is coming out publicly and on the record, and he's saying, hey, I've been there, right? I've been there a long time, stenographer, been there at the speeches, been there in the meetings, and Joe Biden, his abilities are about 50% off of what they used to be. It's clear, and he can point to speeches in talks in 2017 versus the campaign. And of course, this is the first virtual presidential campaign that's ever been run, right? Literally, how many days did he go without speaking to the press? I mean, and now you've got someone on the inside coming out and saying that Joe Biden's cognitive abilities are 50% of what they used to be. That's concerning.
Yeah, this is really stunning. Yeah, and it is concerning and good for him. What a hero to come forward. Look, if this had been President Trump, the New York Times would have already done like a word count and a synthesized audio clips of Trump over the last 3 years and how much he's changed. I mean, this is what's lacking in the media, is this sort of investigative journalism. Good for this guy. He'll probably be out of a job if he's not already. But it's true. Every American can see it. We saw the performance of Joe Biden over the summer. And you saw a different Joe Biden, in my opinion, on Inauguration Day. It was clear to me. I jokingly said they must have pumped him full of Prevagen that morning. He was very up on his energy. He didn't stumble that much. But the next day, it was back to the same old Joe Biden. So there's definitely something going on there. We may never find out. We might be subject to a bait and switch ourselves and be talking about President Kamala Harris a year from now. Who knows? But good for this guy for coming forward. That's the real type of all-American stories we cover at my show and at allamericannews.com, is people who speak truth to power, who come forward and to try to do the best for America. We need to know what's going on with our president.
Oh, absolutely. But, I 100% on that. But look, I was talking about the fact that, we were going to have a President Kamala Harris. I think maybe Joe Biden does 2 years before he himself steps down. And this is something, Jennifer, right, we saw with Nancy Pelosi trying to get Congress to be able to invoke the 25th. I mean, it's not set up that way right now. It's a cabinet thing. But I'm watching that and I'm going, we're so close to the end of Trump's presidency. Why would she want that power? Oh, I get it. It's not for Trump. She wants to invoke it when she wants to invoke it on Joe Biden. And this has always been, I don't know if you think I'm way off here or something, but I think back to the early stages of the presidential campaign, Jennifer, and I go, Joe didn't do very well in Iowa. Did we ever even get the final numbers in Iowa? Wasn't there this app meltdown that they did do? So I don't even think we ever even got those numbers. And he didn't do well in New Hampshire. He jetted out of there before it was even done. But all of a sudden, right, he gets turned around in Carolina. And that was the same few days where all the phone calls were made because everybody started dropping out, right? Mater, Pete, Kamala, they all dropped out. And it's like they got the orders came down, not from God, but probably from Martha's Vineyard, and the calls were made and said, hey, it's not your turn. You're stepping aside. We're going to clear the path and part the water, as if Moses was there, for Joe Biden to be president. And that's because I think Barack Obama always wanted Kamala Harris. And this is how she's going to get to the Oval. And so, I don't think, and Joe said he's a one-term president, right? So he's not going to run it. But also remember back in the early days, how many armchair psychologists and medical doctors did we have? They picked Donald Trump apart from his speech pattern to the way his posture, the way he walked, right? They were accusing him of having all kind of mental deficiencies in medical issues without ever examining him. But it was all okay to speculate and to say these very mean-spirited things about the president. That was okay. But God help you if you question Joe Biden.
And look, you're right. And look, it never mind that it's against the American Psychological Association standards to critique President Trump's mental fitness or any other health of any patient you haven't actually seen. They didn't bother, paying attention to those rules for 4 years. But you're right, we haven't really heard a peep about Joe Biden. You talk Martha's Vineyard. Here was the key phone call was made to Mayor Pete's campaign. Barack Obama asked Mayor Pete to drop out. He called a friend of mine, Liz Smith, who was the comms director for Pete Buttigieg. That set off the whole contagion to get Joe Biden to have the path cleared for Joe Biden. So you're absolutely right. Barack Obama is behind a lot of this. I kind of jokingly say, Joe Biden's kind of like the Weekend at Bernie's candidate. They're just kind of like dragging him around, waving to people. It really is happening. Look who Barack Obama installed to run the internal operations at the White House, none other than Susan Rice, who was behind the Russian collusion investigation and the doxing and the wiretapping, along with Samantha Power of around 400 Americans. The Barack Obama White House is firmly back in place. It just happens to have a Joe Biden sign painted over it. And you're right, there's something about Kamala Harris that Barack Obama loves. I think he sees his image in her. She's a progressive. She's from San Francisco. She sort of, speaks his progressive language. And no doubt, in the same way that they cleared the path for Joe Biden, they will clear the path for Kamala Harris as well.
Yeah. We've got to go in a second, but there's two things I want to leave us with. One is, Jennifer, I think that if the media has been doing their job, so much of the problems and issues we have would have gone away. They wouldn't exist in the first place. And what I mean by that is, if they have done their jobs, asking the questions and being what they're supposed to be, in a check and balance on our politicians, and asking the questions about Hunter Biden and covering the stories, and big tech not cooperating, shutting the New York Post down and telling them you got to take that down and you're not going to get back on. If the media were doing their jobs, and then when it came to the election, if they did their jobs and they asked questions about the irregularities in the voting, if they asked the questions about the laws being changed unconstitutionally, and they asked about all of these things, then I think the American people would have a sense that, okay, the system's working, the media is doing their job, what they're supposed to be doing, asking the questions, looking into it on our behalf, so we don't have to go to rallies and get all upset about it. But they haven't done their job, right? The media does not do their job. We have just a few of us out here asking questions and bringing up stuff that we'll never see in the mainstream media. And for those networks that are out there that are licensed by the FCC, I always remind people that the FCC, that license is actually still issued under an entertainment license. There is no news FCC rating or license issued, by the way, right? So when the president says fake news, he is more accurate than any of you get, because that is the purpose of the license.
I mean, that is such a great point.
Right?
Right, that is such a great point. Here's the joke. The joke is really on the media and on big tech. You mentioned the squelching of the New York Post and others over that Hunter Biden story. There was a new poll that came out, again, NBC News poll, so no conservative rag there, and also a Pew Research Center poll just a week ago. It actually came out on Joe Biden's inauguration day, which I thought was ironic, that the trust in media is at an all-time low, lowest it's ever been since the invention of the media, and trust of big tech has plummeted also. Trust of big tech among Americans is only 27%. Now, think about how they laughed at Donald Trump exiting office on his last day. He had a 47% approval rating. It was one of the highest of any president to leave office, but they snickered at him. Well, guess what? Big tech has half of that approval rating. So the joke is on them. Americans know what's up. They know that the big media and big social media covered for Joe Biden, and it's showing in their numbers. And I think big tech companies are going to have some problems here. You look at what happened the other day. You're a finance guy with the GameStop and others. I think people on Reddit who are conservatives and populists could actually start going after the big tech companies in the same way. It's going to get real interesting this year with the populism in the investment world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, Jennifer, to tell you the truth, I could talk to you for a lot longer. I could go on, and we can't.
We've got 2 minutes left.
We only got a couple minutes left. I want to wish you all the best success with All American Radio. It's great. I love the name. I love the purpose. I love the mission that you have. So we're kindred spirits on that front.
Thank you so much.
So I'll be checking it out. I hope it goes very well. Tell people again the best way to follow you or to find you or where you're streaming or just give us a little bit of that information, and I'll make sure I share it as well.
Sure. They can find me on social media, as long as I'm not banned, at All American Jen JEN. And then also they can just go to the website anytime, allamericannews.com. They can listen to radio episodes on there and read the latest headlines every day.
All right, fantastic. And yes, right, don't we all have to say that? As long as I'm still able to use it and I'm not banned.
You got
you
1
can
minute left.
Find me here. And I've been shadow banned on my Facebook page and all of that. And hopefully, and I assume I'll see you on Parler if and when they come back to the world with us.
Yeah, in fact, that's why I created my own news site, just in case I disappear. I've been shadow banned since like 2012, so you and I are in the same boat. This is just another day at the office for us. All of our friends getting banned now, but that's probably the best way for people to keep in touch is just go to allamericannews.com, and I do respond back. So tell me you heard me on Joe's show, and I'll strike up a conversation with you.
Awesome. All right, Jennifer, thank you so much again. Good luck. Take care.
Thank you, Joe. Have a great weekend.
All right. You too. All right, folks. That was Jennifer Kerns. And again, All American Radio. Look for that information on my site. But that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show, the Saturday edition here on AM 830 WCRN and affiliates. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day.